Born in the small farm town of Cooksville, Illinois on May 1st, 1869, not far from Normal, Illinois, Walter Dill Scott would become a highly influential and respected psychologist. From the outset, Scott was incredibly hardworking. Not only did he work on the farm with his siblings due to his father's poor health, but he would spend every free moment he could reading or otherwise obtaining knowledge. Scott would attend Illinois State Normal University in Normal at age 19, and soon thereafter would acquire a scholarship to attend Chicago's Northwestern University in 1891. There, he would complete his Bachelor of Arts by 1895. While Scott knew he wanted an education, his long-term goals changed more than once. Originally, he wanted to be a teacher, which would have had him looking something like this. But then, he wanted to be a president of a university in China, but focusing on theology, which might have had him looking more like this. So he enrolled in the McCormick Theological Seminary. However, by the time he'd graduated, there were no available positions in China. However, he had developed a greater interest in psychology, reading work by none other than Wilhelm Wundt. As a result, in 1898, he traveled to the psychological center of the world at that time, the University of Leipzig, to study under Wundt, the father of scientific psychology. There he would receive a doctorate of philosophy in psychology and education in 1900. With his new degree, he would return to the United States to become a psychology instructor at Northwestern University, where he'd received his Bachelor of Arts. Shortly thereafter, he was approached by an advertising executive who would ask him to apply psychology to advertising to improve its effectiveness. Scott ended up taking a great interest in this application, and by 1903 he'd published his first book, The Theory and Practice of Advertising. The publication was successful, and he was promoted to professor at Northwestern in 1905. By 1908, he'd published another book, The Psychology of Advertising, which would prove highly influential to advertising strategies and has components that are still highly relevant today. One of the main tenets of Scott's theory was that consumers do not act rationally, which was entirely contrary to classical thoughts on economics. Instead of trying to persuade consumers, Scott thought it would be better treated as a matter of suggestion. Scott first proposed that consumer suggestibility revolved around emotion, sympathy, and sentimentality, appealing to consumers' feelings rather than their rationality. According to Scott, it was also important that ads have direct commands, inspiring consumers to act rather than to think and decide. He would also suggest that ads should include more imagery to attract attention and be self-explanatory. This strategy is very obvious in any mall in modern society. In 1913, he would propose a second approach, which consisted of attention, comprehension, and understanding, whereby advertisements should get the attention of, instill positive beliefs in, and generate desire from consumers in order to cause them to act and purchase the product. Scott's theories on advertising were dominant at the time and are still used to some degree today. In addition to his significant influence on advertising, Scott made some contributions to quantitative intelligence testing, both in selecting employees, but more importantly in recruitment for World War I. After the war, he founded the Scott Company to consult for businesses to improve personnel selection and worker efficiency. While his work in selection was important, the bulk of his work and major contributions were focused on advertising. After the war, Northwestern granted him leave for 2 years to work as director of the newly founded Bureau of Salesmanship at the Pittsburgh Carnegie Technical University, now the Carnegie Institute of Technology, from 1916 to 1918. While there, he would continue his work on applying scientific knowledge to solving business problems, particularly to personnel selection. At the height of his career, in 1919, Scott was elected president of the American Psychological Association, and in 1920 he was elected president of Northwestern University. He would serve there until 1939. Initially, when Scott turned his attention to advertising, taking his knowledge and experience in psychology, he was the first applied psychologist attempting to solve business problems. Edmund Lynch even hails Scott as a pioneer industrial psychologist, a man ahead of his time, and yet somehow he's largely forgotten in the field. This is especially surprising since so many elements of his theories on advertising are still pervasive in modern advertisements. So with all this in mind, how is it possible that the name Walter Dill Scott is not well known among psychology undergraduates? Clearly, he made a large impact on businesses by applying psychology to solve its problems. Intelligent testing was a highly prominent field at the time, and personnel selection is a key subject as well in modern industrial psychology, so why do we not hear of him more often? My thought is that, in spite of his various awards, presidencies, and major contributions to business, since his research contributions were limited in classical psychological areas of interest, his name is less common in current textbooks. That said, it's undeniable that Walter Dill Scott was an important figure in early psychology. Scott was especially critical in the development of applied psychology and the beginnings of the field of industrial psychology, and to this day his influence can still be seen in modern advertising. William Dill Scott would pass away in September of 1955, though his influence lives on.